Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Our Pets in Heaven, and I'm sipping on my vanilla chai tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, burnt umber, which I will call brown, green oxide, deep yellow, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I will be using for some drawing, and then I have 2 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, and I have a number 3 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up too if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paint and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to draw ourselves an outline for the hills. I'm going to use my pencil. I'll give you a couple of markers. We're just going to connect the markers, and by the time we're done, we'll have a couple of roly-poly hills. So on the left-hand side of my canvas, I'm going to come up about 1/3 of the way and make myself a mark. So to know how far this is, if you can kind of eyeball about halfway up or down your canvas, then go about halfway between here and the bottom of your canvas. That'll put you at about 1/4 of the way, and then just a little bit higher than that will give you about 1/3 of the way. Then I'm going to come down from that about 2 inches, give myself another marker, and I'm going to go over to the right side and do something similar. So about 1/3 of the way up, thereabouts, then a couple inches below that, give myself another marker. I'm going to connect these bottom 2 markers with a long kind of roly-poly type of line, so something like this. It's a roly-poly hill, so you don't have to make a straight line, something like that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find about the center of my canvas left to right on this line and go over to the right about 2 inches, make myself a mark. I'm going to connect that to this marker up here with another roly-poly kind of hill like that. Then I'm going to come, I would say, almost halfway between here and here, somewhere around here, make myself another marker, and I'm going to connect this to this marker over here with another roly-poly kind of hill. And that is all I'm going to do for my outline of my hills. You can certainly adjust them however you'd like. We're going to use our large brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large brush, and the colors that I'm going to be using are brown, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have my sky darker at the top, and I'm going to get it to go lighter down at the bottom. We'll be putting our sun and our clouds on later, so you don't have to worry about that right now. We're just going to be going for the background sky at this time. So I'm going to be using my large brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a soft sky blue type of color. So I've already pre-mixed it so you can kind of see where I'm going. How I got to that was I'm adding brown and white to my cobalt blue. So you don't need a lot of the brown and the white, just a little bit into that blue and just start spinning it around. You can get your blue to be lighter or darker than mine, whatever is visually appealing to you. What I'm in essence doing is just taking that super vibrancy out of the cobalt blue and making it a more neutral, natural type of color. So that's looking pretty good to me. Maybe a touch more white in there. And then once you've got the color that is speaking to you, that you're enjoying, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the top of the sky, just wiping this off on the side of my palette. I'm going to start at the top of my sky and just going to be using a left to right type of brush stroke. As I do this, I'm going to be kind of almost like crisscrossing in like a figure eight type of brush stroke. So as I come down my sky, it'll almost start the appearance of light clouds floating by. So now that I've got that top portion on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start picking up white paint on my dirty brush. So what this is going to do is this is going to allow me to have a natural gradient coming down my sky, where it'll get lighter and lighter as it comes down towards that horizon. And you can see how I'm using this kind of crisscross type of brush stroke. It's allowing these colors to blend in, but not blend in with one another, but not totally go smooth. So again, this will help to create that background cloud type of atmospheric effect that I'm going for. And then as I come down towards the horizon line, I don't want it to go all the way white. So what I keep doing is I kind of keep pushing my brush into my canvas, which releases the blue that's within the bristles, that's stuck within the bristles, and I still kind of keep having a little bit come as I come down the canvas. If your paint is totally white by this point and you don't have any more blue coming off of your brush, then you might want to pick up a little bit of that blue just so you don't go 100% white as it comes down towards this horizon line, because we're going to want that sun to pop out and it'll need a color other than white next to it in order for it to look nice and vibrant. And then I'm just going to bring this all the way down to my pencil mark. You can even cross over that pencil mark a little bit if you want to. And then we will be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sky done, you can fiddle with it as much as you want, and then you can wash and dry as I keep fiddling with mine. I like fiddling as the paint is drying because that gets me to smooth it out a little bit and let it make it do whatever it is that I want it to do. And then I'm going to wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the ground. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are brown, green, yellow, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have these back two hills really soft and out of focus and with very light colors, and then I'll make this front one a little bit more in focus with a little bit more vibrant colors. So how I'm going to start this, I'll do these two back hills first. I'm going to be using brown, green, and white in these back two hills. I'm going to have them a little bit darker down at the base or the bottoms of the hills, and then I'll get them to go a little bit lighter as they go towards where the sun is going to be. I'm going to have my sun in through here, so I'll have the tops of them a little bit lighter. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to start with a teeny tiny bit of brown, a teeny tiny bit of green, and a teeny tiny bit of white on my brush at the same time. So I have brown, green, and white on my brush at the same time, and I'm just going to kind of rub this in to this back hill. Just using this circular or scrubbing type of technique. Right now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit more green and white as I go towards the top of this hill, making sure I go all the way up to my pencil mark. And then what I'm going to do as I'm nearing the area where my sun is going to be, I'm picking up just white on my dirty brush. So what'll happen is this hill will get a little bit lighter as it's reaching for the sun over here on the left hand side. You don't have to get it to go all the way white, but a nice light color will look really pretty against this background. And if you want there to look like there's other, areas, it doesn't have to be super smooth. You can have, little light spots and dark spots. I'm going to do the same thing on this hill. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of green, brown, and white on my brush. I'm going to start at the bottom of this hill where it meets this one here, and I'm just applying my paint in a circular or scrubbing type of technique. As I get towards that top, I make a decision what I want to do, and I think I'm just going to pick up maybe a little bit of green and white as I'm getting up in this region, up and through here. And because I'm using the brown and the white in addition to the green, it's allowing it to be this really soft color. And now I'm putting a little bit more white on my brush without washing my brush as I get towards the top of that hill where it's gonna be looking more towards that sun. Gonna bring it right to my pencil mark, and I'm looking for this second hill to be a little bit lighter at the top against the hill that it sits next to. So that way you can see the difference in the two and you can get the perspective of one being in front of the other. And then when I go to do my, my hill down here, I'm going to use that same thought process of it being darker at the bottom and lighter at the top, but I'm going to be using a stippling or a dotting type of technique. I'm not going to wash my brush, but I am going to pick up brown and green to start. And I'm going to just start dotting this bottom portion of this hill. So when I do this, because I'm now using a dotting type of technique with this bristle brush, what's going to happen is it's going to give me all these little speckly marks, which will make it look like it's more kind of in focus grass as opposed to the soft out of focus grass that we did on the back hills. And as I move my way towards the top, now I'm going to pick up some green, yellow, and white. So I have green, yellow, and white on my dirty brush. So there's probably still a little bit of brown left on my brush, and I'm just going to intermingle this so it starts to get lighter and lighter as it's going towards the top of the hill. So green, yellow, and white are the colors that I am introducing to the canvas as it's going up towards the top. And what I do is you'll see that I kind of sometimes back into that previous section, so that way I have these colors overlapping with one another and they really look like it's a gradual transition. Now I'm going to pick up white with a little bit of yellow on my brush without washing it again, so that way it still has the remnants of the greens and the browns on it. And even if you don't have a lot of the remnants of the other colors on there, that's okay, because this is just intended to give you a nice soft transition towards that top of the land. So again, just green or white and yellow as I'm going towards the top of this front hill. I will amp up the edge of it in just a second, so you'll be able to see the difference between it and the hill behind it. But right now, just kind of getting these lighter colors all the way up to my pencil mark, and you can make yours as sunshiny as you want or as subtle as you want. Now, without washing my brush, I'm just picking up white. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just tap in along the edges this beautiful just little white speckles. So this is going to make it look like that sun is just kind of kissing the tips of the gray blades of grass along the edge of this hill. So it'll give the impression that this is the top of the hill, and it is being illuminated by that sun that we're gonna put on in a little while. And you can make this as light or as dark, as prominent or as subtle as you want, but I'm giving it a rough edge so it looks like little blades of grass. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. Just make sure that your edge, you got your pencil covered and you can see the front of that in front of the other hill. And then you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our sun, and we're going to do the first step to the cloud formation. So I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are yellow and white. I'm also going to pre-mix myself a gray color that I'll be using as the first layer for my clouds. So I'm going to first make my gray color so I have that ready when I am ready to use it. So I'm going to be using a little bit of my white. You can use some dirty white if you want to. We're just going to go for a light kind of gray color. I'm going to add a teeny tiny bit of black into it and a teeny tiny bit of brown into it. I'm really just looking for a nice kind of medium to light neutral gray that I'll be able to utilize as a nice base for my clouds, because we're going to need our clouds to have different tonal values in them in order for them to look nice and full. So that's about where I'm headed with that color. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush, because I'm going to start with my sun. So I'm washing and drying my brush, and for my sun I'm going to have it kind of peeking out right in through here. So I'm going to start with white paint on my brush. So just a little bit of white paint. You don't need a lot. And then I'm just going to kind of put it where I want. So bring it right to my hills, in through here. I'm going to give it this crescent type of shape so it looks like a beautiful maybe sunrise or sunset, whatever you imagine it to be. And then I'm just going to kind of, I've got mine probably about 5 inches wide, and then I'm just kind of softening those edges a bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a teeny tiny bit of yellow paint, like just a tiny bit on the corner of my brush with a little bit of white to get the glow around the edges of the sun. So I'm going to get this to make its way and blend into that the center area. And if you found that you did too much yellow or you didn't do enough yellow, you can certainly adjust that however you see fit. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit more white paint just so I can get these two to intermingle a little bit better in their meeting point. So this yellow around the edge, the glow, is going to allow your sun to pop out much more than it just being a light area on the canvas. And then if you want to, you can even take these remnants and just start pulling them out as if they're kind of sun rays going into that sky. So that's going to be a personal preference if you want to do that with the remnants on your brush with that a little bit of that yellow and white. I've got mine very subtle. I didn't pull it out very far, just enough to give that just a little bit of that sunshine glow. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start incorporating my rays of sun into my clouds. So I'm going to be picking up white. I didn't wash my brush. Okay, so if I still have a little yellow on it, that's okay. I'm going to pick up white with a little bit of this gray color. So not much. And I know that I want a big cloud formation up in through here, but I want it to kind of dissipate and go throughout the whole sky too. So I'm going to be utilizing both the gray plus white in order to give myself this soft kind of cloud formation that is maybe coming down over some of my sun rays, maybe making its way over towards this left-hand side of the canvas. Right now I'm picking up a little bit more of that gray color just so I can have a really larger area in this kind of central zone. When I do my clouds, I like to have soft edges to them so they almost get all wispy and kind of just dissipate out into the sky. So that's where I tend to use a pretty dry brush when I start my cloud formation. So if you hear my brush is really scratching against my canvas, that's because I start with a good amount, but then I let that dry brush kind of take over and give me these real soft edges. So I'm going to just kind of pull some of this gray up into the sky in a very soft way. I want peekaboo spots of my blue shining through behind it, so that's where me using this dry kind of scrubbing technique is going to provide me with a great natural type of look to it. I think I'm going to add maybe a little bit up in the sky, up in through here. So this, again, just a tiny bit of paint allowing me to get these airy clouds just floating by and wisping throughout the sky. And then once you've got that done, again, don't worry if it's not perfect at this point. This is really just the beginning step to our cloud formation. So once you've got it in a place where you're comfortable with it, we are going to be utilizing our small brush, or actually we're going to utilize our pencil for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away. I'm thinking that that's pretty good. I can still see spots of my sky showing through and it's nice and airy. So once you've got this done, you can put your large brush away, take out your pencil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw some outlines for our animal in the clouds and our person on the hill. I'm going to be using my pencil. As I do this, I'm going to give you little markers and we'll just kind of connect the markers, but just know that you can really make any animal that you want. You could do a horse head or a cat or a goat or whatever you want. I'm just going to do a cute little puppy head. And for the person, I'm going to do a young female, but again, you can certainly do anything that you want. So for the animal in the clouds, I'm going to start there. I'm just going to do the profile of a puppy. So you can take any animal and just kind of get the side profile of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a little bit of an outline. So I'm going to have the top of my head is going to be, I would say about a quarter way over from left to right and about a quarter way down my canvas. So that's where I'm going to start. And then I'm going to come down, I would say maybe about 4 inches to the bottom of it. And really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself kind of a curved line for the forehead. And then I'm just going to bump it out just a little bit for the muzzle parts of my cute puppy, something like that. I'm going to have the head coming a little bit more to the left, and then I'm just going to put the silhouette of like an ear on here. So if you have if you want to represent a dog that has pointy ears up in the sky, you could certainly point them up. Actually, I think I'm going to bring this ear a little bit further up than that, a little bit maybe towards the length of the nose, something like this. And then I'm just going to kind of mark myself a little bit where I want the eye to go, a little nose maybe in through here, and then maybe a little bit of a mouth. And that's all I'm going to do for my puppy. As I move down to my, or dog, it could be, I like to call them puppies. I guess it doesn't matter how old they are. When I go to my person, I'm going to have my person standing over in this direction as if they're kind of looking up at the sky. I'm going to do a young female with a dress on. So when I do females, I immediately think of like an hourglass type shape for the body. So I'm going to start the top of the shoulders somewhere up in through here. So I've got maybe 2 or 3 inches from the right of my canvas. And if this is halfway up or down, I'm a little bit below that. And then I'm just going to kind of, you can even do it a little bit at an angle so it looks like the body's turned a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of bring this down in a soft kind of inward type of motion, just past where I've got my heel started. And then I'll just bump it out just a little bit for the bottom half of her body. I'm going to bring this out like she's wearing this pretty dress that's got maybe a little bit of a trail or tail on it. Bring this in through here and then just kind of close this in some way in through here. You don't really have to do a whole heck of a lot to that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a head on her. I'm going to have her having long hair. So I'm not going to do a head with much detail. I'm really just going to kind of come up, I would say about an inch and a half from here, give myself this little bit of an oval type of a shape to meet the shoulders. And then I'm going to give myself an area where I want the hair to go. So I'm going to just kind of pull this as if it's kind of draped down the back of the back of her and kind of coming down maybe almost to her waist, somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to have the hair actually coming out a little bit on this right side. So that'll give me some long flowing hair. You can even erase this little line in through here just so when you go to paint it in, it makes it a little bit easier so you know where the hair is versus the body. And then I just need a little bit of an arm on here. So I think of where my elbow is. My elbow usually is around my waist, and I want her to just have, she's holding onto a leash or something. So I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of a line in through here, wherever I feel that that waist is, and then just kind of bring out a little bit of a forearm, something like this, and then just kind of close it off wherever I feel that that would stop. And she's got a little bit of a hand that's going to be holding onto the leash. And of course you can erase this little line in through here. And that's all I'm going to be doing for my silhouette. You can certainly modify yours. Maybe this needs to be a little bit wider in through here. Modify yours as much as you need to. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So you can put your pencil away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our little person here. So I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my sky blue, brown, and black. And what I'm going to first do is I'm going to be using my sky blue to paint her dress. So when I get to the separating part between her arm and her and her body, I will leave my pencil mark visible so that way I don't kind of lose the information as to where I had that line kind of designated. So just right in through here, I'll leave a little bit of that line. So again, I don't, you know, get confused during the painting process. I'm not doing any fancy brush stroke in through here. I'm just really coloring in all the parts that I want to be represented as her dress. You could certainly have her wearing different kind of clothing. You could have her wearing a different colored shirt. Maybe she's got a tank top on and you want the color of her arms to show. It's going to be totally up to you how you want to paint this in with the different colors, but I'm just going to go for something that's really complementary to the rest of the painting. So she's going to have brown hair, she's going to have a blue dress, and she's going to just fit in really nicely with our painting. So I'm going to bring this all the way to my pencil mark, and I'm doing a pretty solid coat in through here. So I'm using quite a bit of paint and just kind of bringing it out towards the end in order to make it look like it's got a little bit of movement as I get towards the bottom of the dress as it's meeting the land. I'll probably give it a little bit of ripple down at the bottom, but right now just kind of bringing this towards the edges, and then as I go down at the bottom, you can certainly ripple it. You don't have to if you don't want to, but that will give you a little bit of extra movement as it's flowing down and touching the ground. And then once I've got that colored in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush. Maybe I'll bring this. That crease in her arm doesn't need to be that far up there. There we go. That looks pretty good. And you can give a little ruffled edge at the bottom of the hairline as well if you want to. Then I'm going to wash my brush and I'm going to paint in a base coat for my hair and my hand. I'm going to use just brown paint for that. You could certainly make a custom skin color if you wanted to, but I'm just going to utilize this brown as my base coat. I think we don't need much detail on this at all, so I'm just going to give her a nice neutral color to it, and then same thing with her hair. So I know that my brown is a little transparent or translucent where you can see through it, so I know that if I don't use a lot, I can get these really light areas throughout her hair. So I'm going to utilize that in a minute to give myself a couple of wispy pieces of hair along the edges. But if you wanted to, you could certainly, again, change the color of the hair. Maybe you want yours to have blonde hair or black hair or whatever color that you want, or curly hair, whatever is speaking to you. But right now I'm just kind of getting myself this base coat in through here, bringing it all the way to the edge. When I come down towards where it's going to meet the dress, you can paint it into the dress a little bit. If it overlaps, even if your blue is a little wet, that's okay. You can certainly, when we go to a future step, you can clean up any of those edges if you want to. But right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush with this brown, and I'm going to pull out a couple of single strands of hair as if maybe they're being blown in the wind. So I have a little bit of water on my brush. This is going to add to the movement of the painting as well. So a touch of water on my brush. Maybe we've got a couple of little flyaway pieces. Oh, and my hand's totally in the way right now. Trying to get it out of the way. But maybe a couple of little pieces coming down this side in through here. I'm hardly touching my canvas, and I've got a little bit of water on my brush, so this allows me to get these little skinnier pieces in through here. And of course you can totally make yours however you want. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to be putting the base coat for the leash as well. So if you are doing a different animal in your sky and you want to customize what she's holding on to, or maybe you don't want her holding on to anything, you can certainly modify this as much as you want. But I'm going to put just a little bit of black paint on my brush, and I'm just going to have her holding a leash with the collar kind of on the ground. So I've got just a little bit of black plus water on my brush. I'm going to have the edge of the leash that she's holding on to in through here. And I want it to kind of look like gravity's taking over, so I'm just going to kind of bring it down in this direction. And I'm imagining her feet are going to be right about here underneath her skirt, so that's about where I'm going to have it hitting the ground in through here. So just making sure my hand, whoops, Sorry about that. Just making sure, let me just put that up one more click. Sometimes that happens when I'm pushing my hand down nice and hard. So I've got this, and I'm just gonna kind of come down in through here, make it kind of hit the ground like this. And then I'm just gonna put a little bit of a circular type of shape as if this is the collar part in through here. And then you can make any little adjustments that you want. And then we're going to be utilizing the same small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our young person here. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are my sky blue, white, black, brown, and maybe a little yellow, but not sure about that yet. So what I'm gonna first do is I'm gonna put my shadowy areas in place, which are gonna be underneath her hair, a little bit on her back. I'll put a couple of little pieces of shadows throughout her hair as well, so we've got some good dimension there. I'm gonna put shadow underneath her skirt and on the ground behind her, maybe a little shadow underneath the leash, and then we'll just build our way to the light. So I'm going to put a little bit of black and brown on my small brush to start. And what I'm first going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath the dress. So I'm going to kind of bring this up wherever I feel that the dress buckles up a little bit. I'm putting some good darkness underneath there, so it really gives us the appearance that this dress has some form to it. And then once I've got that in there, what I'm going to do, I'm putting a little bit of water on my brush, and I'm considering my light source to be over here where the sun is, so it's going to cast a shadow to the right. So I am just going to rub this shadow into the grass over to the right hand side. So I had that brown and black on my brush plus a little bit of water. And you can make yours as dramatic as you want. You can have it really dark if you want, or really light, or faint. It's going to be totally up to you, whatever is visually appealing to you, but just have it going off to that right hand side will make sense. Now I'm going to load my brush with a little bit more black and brown. I'm going to put some shadow underneath her hair and on her back. So a little bit of black and brown is going to go right underneath her hair, in through here, and then behind her arm. So this is where I can close off this line that I preserved for my painting ease. And then I'm going to just give her a little bit of a shadowy area in the crook of her back, where her back bends a little bit. And I keep wiping my brush off on my paper towel to make sure that I have the correct quantity of paint on my brush. If I have too much, it might pull that shadow a little bit too far, so I just kind of kept wiping it off a little bit. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit more black and brown and give myself a couple of marks in her hair. So maybe where the back of her head kind of dips down in through here, she'll get a little bit of shadow in that hair. Maybe we'll put a couple of shadowy pieces in through here too. Not much, because I still want her to look like she's got brown hair and not black hair. So I'm just putting a couple of pieces in through there, maybe a little bit underneath here. And then I'm going to put a tiny bit of a shadow underneath my my leash. So again, brown and black, but I do have a little bit of water on my brush because I want this shadow to look like it is on the grass. And I'm feeling like the leash is touching right about here, so I'm going to put a little shadow right in through here. So this is just going to kind of lead up or lead kind of over towards her body, because it'll look like it's a shadow of that leash, something like that. And then maybe a little bit underneath here, and maybe a little bit inside that leash as it's sitting on the ground. So more brown on this particular shadow, so it doesn't take away from the visual of the actual leash itself. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to work on some highlights. So my highlights are going to be on the dress with blue and white. So I'm putting blue and white on my brush. I'm going to have a little bit of a highlight on her shoulder in through here. So this is going to make her arm kind of pop out and look like it is out in front of her back, so to speak. So just kind of putting a little bit of blue and white on there, and making sure all of my pencil marks are fully hidden. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white on my dirty brush to give this shoulder just a little bit more of a highlight, and then just kind of getting it to blend in a little bit. I'm going to give myself also a little bit of a highlight, as if her arm is lifted away from her body a little bit. I'll put a touch of a highlight on her hip in through here. So that's going to tell the viewer that the arm is lifted away from the body a bit, and that we're catching a bit of the sunshine through here. And then on the actual dress itself, I want this to just really look flowing and like it's got a lot of movement to it. So I'm going to utilize white and blue as I'm coming down these sides and just giving myself some little bits of highlights to give the visual information that this skirt maybe kicks out a little bit at the end. So maybe the ends are a little bit lighter, and that maybe there's some, you know, some movement in that skirt. So instead of it just being a flat color, if you provide the viewer with the information that there is high spots and low spots, that's going to tell the viewer that there in fact is some form or shape to this, so it doesn't just end up being one solid color. So I lightened up her butt a little bit to tell the viewer that that popped out, and then you can just adjust it with that original blue as much as you want. Maybe I want a little, maybe this little edge of the skirt is brightened up by the sun as well. So these little edges, if you can have them telling the story of being illuminated as well, that just kicks it up a notch. Then I'm going to put some highlights on her. Oh, let me finish this shoulder. I guess I didn't smooth that out enough. I'm going to put some highlights on her hair and her hand as well. So on her hand, I'm going to put white and brown. So I have white and brown on my brush, and I'm really just going to give these little kind of light marks. I just put a little bit more white on my brush just so we can feel that there are a couple of little fingers in through here. Nothing too invasive. I just want to give the implication that this is something other than her shirt. So a little bit light color in through there does that. And then same thing with her hair. So I think on her hair I might add a touch of yellow to it. So I'm going to actually make myself brown, yellow, and white. So this will just be like a little bit of a lighter version of the brown, so I can maybe get some nice natural highlights in it. So that's where I'm going, a little light golden color. I'm going to add a couple of little streaks in her hair to give myself a little bit of movement. I just added a bit more white onto my brush, and I'm not going to do much, just kind of giving the information of the direction of the hair. Maybe we've got some coming over the shoulder in through here, and once I've kind of got all of the pieces that I want in place and the direction with these little bits of highlights, I can start adding back some of that original brown just to make sure that I've got everything colored in properly. So I got my highlights, maybe a little bit more white in through here just so we can see the shape of the head a little bit more. Yeah, there we go, that works. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm picking up just some of my brown to make sure that this back region where I had the original color is fully executed, and I've got a nice layer of that. And if there's any other areas that I want to add little straggler pieces of hair, I certainly can. I like the area on this shoulder, how it kind of looks like it's catching a little bit of light, so I just added a bit more white to my brush to get that to do that. And then you can just fiddle with it as much as you want, and once you're all set, we are going to be utilizing this small brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna finish our animal in the cloud. So I'm gonna be using my small brush. The colors that I'm gonna use are the gray that we made initially for the clouds, white, and maybe a little bit of black and brown as well. So what I'm really looking to do, my whole goal is to make this animal look like it is part of the clouds. So I'm thinking fluffy, light, airy, not much detail. I just really want to give the representation of this animal, whatever that animal may be, and have it kind of morphing from the clouds. So again, less is more. So we've already got our outline. Really what I'm looking to do is I'm going to lighten the edge of my silhouette and any areas that I want to pop out. And then in order for the animal to look like it's kind of popping out of the cloud, I'm going to make sure that the cloud is kind of a little bit darker sitting next to it. That might not have made a whole lot of sense. I'll talk you through as I do it. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of white paint. So you don't need a lot, just a little bit. What I'm going to start by doing is kind of giving myself the outline of my animal. I'm going to be wiggling my brush a lot. I'm going to be doing dots. I'm going to be doing whatever I can to make this look like a cloud. And in my opinion, clouds are soft and fluffy, and they morph from one to the other, so everything kind of looks like it's connected. So it's okay if you overlap areas, or if if the little forehead grows a little bit, that's okay, because that's just making it look like it's growing, like the cloud is flying away. So don't worry about this being a perfect representation. We're just trying to get it to be a representation. So I'm going right up to that little nose and giving myself some white fluffiness in through there, and just kind of rubbing it out into the neighboring gray that we already had. So I'm going to do the same thing on the muzzle or the cheeky area where I want that to pop out a little bit. I put my white, and then I'm just going to kind of rub it out so this area will look like it's popping out towards the viewer a little bit more. You can see I'm kind of reserving my nose and my eye for I'm going to put a little bit of darkness on them, but right now just kind of utilizing my white to get these, to get the face to kind of pop out a little bit in through here. Going to put a little bit in through here, and then the chin area, I know that I want that to kind of disappear in the cloud down in through here, but I want to start the process by just kind of rubbing on a little bit of white on top of my pencil. Even if I can still see my pencil underneath there, that's fine. Picking up more white to work on this ear. So again, just kind of tapping it, making it look kind of messy around the edges, but still thinking I want to get rid of my pencil mark. I'm starting on this right edge because it's going to sit next to this little darker area on the dog's face. And you could, again, do the same thing if you're doing any kind of animal, wherever you want it to pop out a little bit more. We're just going to put a little bit more white. And then as I get down towards this edge, I want the edge of the ear to kind of show a little bit. So I'll put a little bit of extra white there. And then I'm just going to kind of rub this out. We'll get that to blend into the neighboring cloud once we get those in place. So just making sure my pencil is covered in through here. So that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my nose and my mouth, my little features. So I'm going to be using my original gray and a tiny bit of black paint. What I want to do is I just want to make it a tiny bit darker than that original gray. So this way it will lead the viewer's eyes to it. You can leave it that original gray, but we put pencil on it, so the pencil is going to make it darker anyways. So I just want to paint it in so I have something that is representational of the nose itself and the features. So just kind of lightly rubbing this in. I'll get it to look a little bit fainter in a minute, but I'm just kind of rubbing it in on top of my pencil mark in a very carefree, painterly type of way. And if it grows a little bit too big, that's fine. We can put a little bit of white on top of it in a minute. Going to do the same thing for my eye. My eye, I'm going to give a little bit more character to it. So I've got my shape of my eye, but I think I want to pull this corner down a little bit and maybe give it a little bit of definition, like a little eye dented area where the kind of the bridge of the nose meets like that eye socket area. So that's a quick little trick that can give you a little bit more dimension on this without going overboard. If you have a animal that's got, really big eyebrows, you can add, I just put a little bit more white on my brush. You can put some extra white wherever, you want that expression to appear. So you can customize it to look just like your animal by just adding those little bits of information. If your dog has a longer nose, you put a longer nose. If your dog, has pointy ears, you can put pointy ears, but it's all pretty much can be the same kind of process to it. And once I get this in here, I do want to soften it a little bit, so you can, with a tiny bit of white, you can even go right over those areas that you have in place. So this is going to make it kind of merge right into the whole cloud formation. Or if you need to dull it down any, this will help you to do that as well. I just really am looking for this to be a faint illusion. So down at the bottom of the head and on the edge of the head, making sure that this really pops out, I am going to add a little bit of my, my darker gray in underneath here, just to make sure that as we work our way into the clouds, that this head does pop out a little bit extra. So if you feel like your head is a little bit too similar in color to the clouds next to it, you can add a touch of that darker shade of gray and just make sure that it kind of blends in with the neighboring. Or if you wanted to show part of the body, you could certainly add, you know, a little bit of lightness in the neck, or, you know, whatever is going to be representational of the animal that you're looking to showcase in this will be totally fine. And then you just fiddle with it as much as you want to. We're going to actually use our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your adorable, sweet animal up in these clouds, you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna finish our clouds. I'm gonna be using my large bristle brush. The dominant color I'm gonna be using is white, but I'll most likely also use some of that background gray as well. I wanna make sure that I maintain dimension in these clouds, and if I go too white, too quickly, and too much, I might have to come back with some of that other gray. But less is more when it comes to making clouds, so you use very little bit of paint at a time. You can even use your white with a little bit of water in it, or a little bit of liquid medium, so you can have it flowing very nicely, and it can have some transparency, so you can see some of those colors underneath. But I'm just gonna show you how I'm gonna build mine, and then you can work yours accordingly. So I'm putting a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm also going to pick up a tiny bit of the gray paint just to start, to be safe, that I don't go too white too quickly. So I have white plus my gray on my brush, and I'm going to really start to just kind of form where I want these light spots to go. I know I want my dog to kind of be emerging out of these, so I'm going to put some of this, the fluffiest of clouds kind of emerging out in through here, making for a nice display. I'm using predominantly like a circular type of brush stroke. You could certainly use a crisscross wherever your comfort zone is. Feel free to explore that. You can also go outside of the original footprint of the cloud that you did earlier. So if you're going about this, like I know when I get to the edges, I'll be adding some extra lightness to and airiness to my clouds, but wherever you're feeling like you need extra stuff, put extra stuff. So I just put a little bit more of the white plus the gray on my brush, just to make sure that I have some nice fullness in through here, but still airiness as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and start building these lighter areas as I'm working my way around my animal. So maybe I've got a little bit extra in through here, and I'm continuing to pick up white plus the gray, and I'll do that color combination until I change it, and then I'll tell you when I change it. So I'm going to bring some of this lightness over here, and you want to kind of keep some of those dark areas from the clouds before. That's what's going to make it look really nice and natural. You can put some of these lighter areas on top, or you know, whatever, wherever you're feeling. There's so many different kinds of clouds out there, so you can really form them in whatever formation you want. But again, my goal is to keep some of that original gray showing, so that way it gives me this buildup of the clouds, so they have a lot of dimension in them. And then I'm just kind of bringing this out because I had some over here, so we're going to just kind of bring out some of this lightness in through here. Maybe we've got some up and through there. And I love making my clouds and kind of letting them almost form themselves throughout the process. I want a big one up in through here. You can have fluffy tops to them and softer bottoms. That sounds like a funny joke, but sorry. My head gets away from me sometimes. But I'm just going with this medium, the white plus the medium gray to start the building process, and making sure that my dog looks like he's really just kind of emerging from behind these clouds. This is looking very fancy. And then as I get up towards this top, just making sure these are doing what I want. And again, if you want to, you can add a tiny bit of water to your brush. That's going to allow you to get it to kind of sink into the little crevices of the canvas a little bit more. I'm going to be using I'll bring in my white in a minute, but right now just kind of getting all this airiness in through here to make it, whoops, I just totally threw my brush. Hold on a second. That's what happens sometimes when we're painting and having fun. The brush goes flying across the room. So now that I've got this on here, I'm going to start picking up some white, just white, because I know that I use just white in my little puppy head. So, and you can, like, I have a very little paint on my brush right now. If you felt like you wanted to soften any of this, you certainly could. Now I'm picking up just white paint. So this is where I'm going to be very cautious. I don't need to add this everywhere. I'm really just going to kind of give myself some little bits of the brightness throughout my clouds, making sure that it really, everything just kind of talks to each other and it makes sense in my head anyways. And you know, this is one of those things too where do a little bit, walk away. Look at it from a distance, let it dry, and keep just building it until you've got it into that visual place that makes you happy. Because when you're doing something like this, it's really hard to get it on the first shot and to get it exactly the way that you wanted, and having it look perfect, you know, perfectly executed, like you've been painting for, you know, 85 years and you're, you know, and you've just mastered all of the brush strokes. This is one of those that will take you probably a few shots to get this layering onto these clouds to make it look as airy as you want it to. You can even bring some of this lightness down, whatever works for you. And then I'm going to put some extra brightness up in through here. I really wanted to, you know, feel like this dog is emerging from the clouds. So I want it all to look like it is, you know, from the same cloud formation. So I'm gonna just kind of make sure the color transcends over into some other areas. But as I get towards this white, I'm using less real estate. Like I'm not putting white everywhere. I'm just kind of strategically bringing it and lightening up some of these areas so it looks like these clouds have lots of dimension to them. And if you feel like you want to add more darkness to it, feel free to do so. Pull back in some of that original gray, you know, whatever works for you. And that's looking pretty good to me. Maybe a little bit more lightness in his ear. Maybe this ear kind of is just merging from this cloud next to it. And you can even continue to lighten up your puppy's head if you feel like you want any more brightness on that. Just keep fiddling with it until you found that perfect balance. And then once you do, we have one more little step to go, and it's going to be with that small brush. So once you've got this done, and you can see I'm just kind of like even going right over my dog, just making sure it looks like it's part of the cloud. Have fun with it, explore your cloud making abilities, and just remember to have fun while you're doing it. And once you're done, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm gonna sign mine with my small brush. I'm gonna go with black paint. I'm gonna go bottom left here. I sign mine with my initials, but you can certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol, or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very sentimental image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.